What's going on, guys, and welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown review for January 8th, 2021. I am Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. And I thought this was another pretty good episode of SmackDown overall. Last week's show wasn't bad, but it felt like a bit of a come-down show following that great Christmas episode 2 weeks ago. This was somewhere in the middle. We had two title matches, a high-stakes main event, and overall just what I thought was a pretty good show. With only 3 matches, that's really all that we had. We had the opening segment with Roman Reigns and company and Adam Pearce. We had the Intercontinental Championship match. We had the SmackDown Tag Team title match. And then we had the 6-man Gauntlet main event, which obviously ate up a bunch of time. But yeah, so we'll get into all of it right now. But I thought this was a pretty good show overall. Before we get into any of it, before we get into the SmackDown review real quickly, be sure to check out my exclusive interviews right now with not only the number one contender, or the ex-number one contender, I guess, to the Intercontinental Championship, Apollo Crews. That went up yesterday in audio form right here on the channel, and in article form over on dailyddt.com. We talked all about his upcoming opportunity at that point, because we spoke on Wednesday. His opportunity to go for the Intercontinental Championship on SmackDown last night, potentially turning heel, which it sounds like we might be going in that direction based off of recent events and based off what happened on this show, which is pretty cool. So here are his thoughts on potentially going heel at some point, his frustrations, the frustrations he's fought in WWE, getting opportunities, being U.S. champion last year, and so much more. It's a great interview. That, as well as my exclusive interview. We had not only one, but 2 interviews yesterday here on the channel. The other one being with the one and only, the iconic, celebrating 25 years in WWE yesterday, Stone Cold Steve Austin himself was on the channel here yesterday and over on Bleacher Report, talking all about straight up Steve Austin, WWE, and so much more. It was an awesome interview. So those went up yesterday, and also my interview with Keith Lee from Monday. So if you're not already subscribed here to the channel, what the hell are you waiting for? You get SmackDown audio reviews every Saturday. I forget what day of the week it is. Exclusive interviews, Q&A videos, excerpts from my podcast, WWE Network content reviews, like Raw Talk, Talking Smack, which should also be up here today. Total Bellas reviews, that's coming up tomorrow as well. Broken Skull Sessions reviews, that's coming up on Monday. So if you haven't already, please subscribe. You will not regret it. So let's get into what you guys came here to hear about. My thoughts on SmackDown for January 8th, 2021, which again, what I thought was a pretty good show overall. So we kicked off the show with Roman Reigns and company, basically bullying Adam Pearce. So it was the usual solid stuff from Roman Reigns on the microphone, Paul Heyman standing behind him, Jey Uso standing beside him, and they call out Adam Pearce. And they just bullied him for a few minutes, and we already knew at that point that we were getting a gauntlet match in the main event, with the winner advancing to the Royal Rumble for a shot at the Universal Championship. And this was also where they showed the footage of Kevin Owens getting beaten up by Roman and Jey and getting double-teamed by them last week. Kevin Owens was nowhere to be seen on this show. I thought he might take someone's spot in the gauntlet. I thought he might help someone win. He was only referenced in video package here, but I guess they gave him the week off after that pretty brutal beating that he took last week on the show, which, if that's the case, then I'm all for it. I'll get to the whole Universal Championship situation at the end of this review. But yeah, Kevin Owens was nowhere to be seen on the show, despite it looking like we were going to get the continuation of that rivalry going into the Royal Rumble, which we still might. But it was weird that we did not see him on the show. Although if they are selling the injuries, and that's why he was gone from the show this week, then I'm all for that. But this was the usual solid stuff from Roman Reigns in the microphone, setting up the Gauntlet match main event. We found out later in the night backstage that Paul Heyman, in his words, pulled some strings and got Adam Pearce, a former NWA champion, into the main event Gauntlet match, where the winner again would advance to the Rumble to face Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. So this was a good segment. Adam Pearce, I'm not sure if he's been established enough for people to care about him, feel sympathy toward him, like when Mick Foley was the GM of Raw a couple of years ago. Not the greatest GM because of how often he would be overruled by Stephanie and by Vince and the whole Triple H and people like that. But whenever Stephanie slapped Mick or undermined Mick, you had sympathy toward Mick because he was a very likable figure. We knew who he was. Not every authority figure in WWE TV will be a former WWE champion or a former prominent figure on the show, but the least they could have done in the last 6 months or so was establish Adam Pearce as whatever the hell his role is supposed to be, because currently we have no clue. I don't know if he's a GM. I don't know if he's a commissioner, which is basically what he is, because he's constantly on Raw. He's constantly on SmackDown. He's making the matches, but all they label him as is a WWE official. What the fuck does that even mean? So they bully him around. We found out later on in the show that, again, Heyman pulled some strings and got Adam Pearce into the main event, despite the fact that he didn't want to be a part of the main event, because as far as WWE canon is concerned, he is not an in-ring competitor. He has never once competed for WWE. He was at one point very much involved in the NXT process, then 205 Live, now in the main roster. Pretty heavy influence, presence, what have you, I believe, on the creative process of NXT 205 Live, now in the main roster as far from an on-air standpoint. So yeah, I just don't know if he's been established enough for people to care about him being bullied by Roman Reigns and Jey Uso and Paul Heyman. But overall, though, I thought this was a good segment. We then got the Intercontinental Championship match between Big E and Apollo Crews. Big E's first defense as the Intercontinental Champion since winning it 2 weeks ago on SmackDown on Christmas. And it was against Apollo Crews. So Apollo Crews helped out Big E in the first place, which I completely forgot about, or either just wasn't paying attention when it happened. Apollo Crews was one of those lumberjacks in that Intercontinental Championship match 2 weeks ago, essentially helping Big E win the Intercontinental Championship. Last week, he came to Big E's aid, helping him beat Corbin and Zayn in tag team action. Apollo Crews immediately answered Big E's open challenge for this week. Last week, he answered it, and it was, we got the match this week for the Intercontinental Championship. Now, Apollo Crews has had opportunities at the Intercontinental Championship before, but usually it's like a one and done. SummerSlam 2016, he got a shot and lost. I believe he got a shot at the Intercontinental Championship on Raw. I'm pretty sure it was the final Raw of 2018. It was against Dean Ambrose. I remember that. Very forgettable, but I remember for some reason. It was a good match, and then he lost. So he's had his fair share of championship opportunities. Of course, he was the reigning United States champion for a pretty good chunk of time in 2020, which was cool. But they haven't done a whole lot with Apollo Crews lately. And he talked a lot about this in my aforementioned interview with him that went up yesterday here on the channel, cheap plug, about not being on the show, sitting backstage, not getting opportunities, taking advantage of the opportunities that he is given. Unfortunately, here he did fall short of becoming Intercontinental Champion. So what happened was, the match itself was disappointing, and that I know these guys can go out there and fucking kill it. The match literally went all of 2 or 3 minutes before it ended in a draw, which I thought actually was really well done. So Apollo Crews got it like an inside cradle on Big E or something. And it actually looked like Apollo Crews became champion, but when you didn't hear his music and the referee was all conflicted, and then we went to commercial break, you kind of got the feeling, okay, it was a draw, and it wasn't like Apollo Crews becoming champion. So they come back from commercial, they resume the match. After the first match, they restarted it. It wasn't like a second match or something, so that's why I just say Big E beat Apollo Crews not once, not twice. It was just one match broken up into 2 different parts. So anyway, they do the match over again, and then it was all of 2 minutes again before it ended with Big E decisively winning and retaining his Intercontinental Championship. So Apollo Crews falls short, but based off his mannerisms in this match and what he had to say in Talking Smack the next day, which I'll get to in another video soon here on the channel, probably up already by now, actually. It looks like they might be turning him heel, which is interesting because, again, I just asked him about this in another interview yesterday for DailyDDT.com, and he was very excited at the opportunity of it potentially turning heel at some point. It didn't happen last year. It looks like we might be getting it this year, which is awesome. So it gives Big E something to do, a real rival as opposed to just a one-off on SmackDown for his championship. I thought this was good stuff. The match itself wasn't anything special, unfortunately. But if they build up the feud more, maybe Crews goes full-fledged heel, and then by that point, maybe then they can go with a banger of a match, either at the Royal Rumble or at the February pay-per-view or whatever. So I thought that was well done from a storyline standpoint overall. The match was disappointing, but I liked what they accomplished here with Crews, showing frustration, and hopefully it does lead somewhere and it's not abruptly dropped, as many things tend to be in this company. We had Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode gunning for the Street Profits SmackDown Tag Team titles once again. They had a match for the Tag Team titles about a month ago on SmackDown, and the Profits won with that was never acknowledged again, by the way. Now, Roode and Ziggler earned themselves another title opportunity, apparently by attacking the Profits last week. I don't know if it was ever explained that they got another opportunity because Montez Ford did cheat. He held the tights when he pinned, I think it was Ziggler, when they had their, I was going to say first match, but they've already had a bunch of matches by this point. It's basically the New Day versus Hurt Business of SmackDown, but this they've spaced out a little better so they didn't burn through all the matches in the span of a month. It's been a couple of months. I think this feud's really been going on and off since like October. So anyway, they have the match, and it was never once said that Ziggler and Roode were given another opportunity because of how they lost the last time. That was just forgotten about. So whatever. They did attack Montez Ford's leg pretty aggressively last week here on the show, on SmackDown. And during that whole smoketacular New Year's celebration, which was complete crap, but it is what it is. So they targeted Montez Ford's leg, and I thought it would just be WWE's way of giving fans a reason to think that they might win the championships here. But then they actually did win the title, so that took me by surprise. This was a pretty big win for Ziggler and Roode because the Profits have been consistently champions since March. They never actually lost the Raw Tag Team titles. They merely just swapped them with the New Day back in October when they were drafted to SmackDown and New Day went to Raw. So they were never actually beaten for those Raw Tag Team Championships. They were Raw Tag Team Champions for around 7 months. They've been SmackDown Tag Team Champions for about 3 months now. So they've been consistently champions for about 10 months now, which is crazy. And they've done a great job in the role. The tag team division, of course, is not a priority to WWE, so they've done the best with what they've been given. But they've beaten a lot of teams, and including Ziggler and Roode. But they lost here after Ziggler and Roode targeted Montez's leg. They hit this great-looking finisher. I don't think I've seen them hit this tag team finisher before. It was a spine buster from Roode, which is basically like a setup move for him. And then Ziggler does the zigzag at the same time. So I thought that was really fucking cool. I don't really care about Ziggler and Roode as a tag team. And it's weird. Ziggler does nothing for me at this point, although the guy is very good in the ring. I think there's a lot of untapped potential there with Roode, but they might only see him at a certain level, unfortunately. The team itself, they've just been beaten like a fucking drum for the last year now, to the point where I just don't care. They're just another heel tag team. And I think Roode could be doing a lot more. I think Ziggler is Roode's, like, sidekick or whatever. I think would be cooler, but they need more tag teams, so whatever. So yeah, Ziggler and Roode became the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions here. And what I thought was a good match. It was a great-looking finish. It made sense. They pinned Ford for the titles. And now we have new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. The only part about this I don't like is that Ziggler and Roode are the SmackDown Tag Team Champions. Yeah, the Profits have been champions for a long time, but I feel like there was more you could have done there with them on the SmackDown side of things. They still have Cesaro and Nakamura waiting in the wings for a title shot. They haven't done the Profits versus Cesaro Nakamura yet in a full-fledged feud, so I was kind of surprised that they took the belts off of them here. That wouldn't have been the Mania match. To me, the Mania match is the Profits versus the Usos. I don't think we've gotten that match yet, because the Usos have always been on SmackDown, the Profits were on Raw, and since the Profits came over to SmackDown, the Usos have been injured, or at least Jimmy Uso has been. I want to see Jimmy back with the Roman Reigns and Jey Uso stuff as a heel. And you can do Jey and Jimmy versus the Profits at WrestleMania. And maybe that's where the Profits lose the championships finally. We didn't get that. They lost the titles here. That's not to say they won't regain them before WrestleMania. But I just thought it was a weird decision because outside of a rematch where the Profits, again, could get the belts back, what do you do with these two teams? I mean, Profits, I guess, could always feud with Cesaro Nakamura without championships on the line, but that's not as interesting. And who do you have Roode and Ziggler defend against? The Mysterios, maybe? I mean, that's not a bad idea, but I would rather see the Profits as champions. And then maybe Mysterios in chase mode and the Usos. And maybe like a triple threat tag team title situation at WrestleMania. That's what I would... Or maybe a 4-way with Ziggler and Roode. Who the fuck knows, but... Yeah, it's a weird situation, so I'm not really sure where they go from here. I liked everything with what they did here. The match was good, the finish was cool, it made sense. I just don't know what you do with these guys as the champions now. So just like that, we get to the main event, and I should mention this before I forget. Sonya Deville, we saw her return last week on the show in like a quick cameo backstage, walking backstage, blinking you missed it. She was back here on SmackDown in at least 2 different segments during the show. And it was explained that she was off for a couple months, and I guess she really needed a job, especially during a pandemic. And Sonya Deville was hired by Adam Pearce to be his new assistant. Now, that was the role that I thought would go to Billie Kay, and it still could at some point, because I obviously don't think Sonya Deville is long for this role. Hopefully, Sonya either continues to wrestle while in this role, or they just get her out of the role and put her back in the ring before long. Either way, I think all roads should lead to Sasha Banks and Sonya Deville. Maybe not at WrestleMania, because the WrestleMania match should be Bianca and Sasha, in my opinion. Maybe it is Sasha and Sonya at WrestleMania. I don't know, but I think all roads will lead to Sonya getting back in the ring at some point. That goes without saying. So she is the new assistant to the WWE official, Adam Pearce. Billie Kay was on the show interacting with the Riot Squad backstage before the main event, essentially proclaiming that she is the newest member of the Riot Squad. So it's not really a storyline I care about, but it's a nice additional story aside from what we've been getting with Bayley and Bianca lately, and Sasha and Carmella. None of them were in any matches on the show. We had no women's matches on the show. We had the Riot Squad in the backstage segment. Carmella sent a message to Sasha, and I think Bianca and Bayley also interacted. So they were on the show. They just weren't in matches at all, which was unfortunate. But they had to give a lot of time to the main event, which was a 6-man number one contenders gauntlet match, with the winner facing Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship at the Royal Rumble. This was great stuff overall. The finish did not land for me. I thought that fell flat, but the actual match was good. So the first two in there were Rey Mysterio and Sami Zayn. And I guess they just dropped the whole Murphy, Mysterio, Aaliyah bullshit because Murphy was nowhere to be seen. He has not been seen on the show in at least a month. Aaliyah was not here. The only person that came out with Rey was Dominic. And hey, I'm not complaining, but I'm not really sure what the whole point of the whole Murphy-Aaliyah relationship was if they've barely been on the show since then. I know they were feuding with Corbin for a few weeks. I'm not sure if that's still a thing. Murphy and Rey, that is, and then Dominic and Aaliyah would come out with them. I don't know, but it was just Rey and Dominic here. Rey Mysterio quickly beat Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn came out, calling for a conspiracy, saying it was a conspiracy against him, and then he promptly got beat within a minute, which is exactly what should have happened. And I think these two could have a fun match, but to kind of move things along, this didn't need to be a competitive match. It made sense with the character of what Sami is going for right now, so I understood what they did. But yeah, so Rey Mysterio wins. He then went on to face, who was it? Shinsuke? Oh yeah, so Shinsuke Nakamura comes out. Why any of these people would be involved in a number one contenders match, I have no idea. Nakamura got beat by fucking Otis a couple weeks ago in a gauntlet match. So why he was in this match and not someone like Otis, for example, I have no idea. Aside from the fact that it just made for a better match. So Nakamura comes out, beats Rey, following a pretty good, exchange. Nakamura and Corbin also had a pretty decent match. Nakamura beats him too. Daniel Bryan comes out. This is where I figured, okay, Bryan's going to win. And it was a weird thing because Bryan has already been announced for the Royal Rumble. So looking at who was involved in this match, I thought Daniel Bryan would win. Maybe they changed plans. They don't want to do Owens and Reigns at the Rumble anymore. They're going to do Bryan and Roman instead, as opposed to having Bryan involved in the Rumble match. But no, Daniel Bryan lost clean as a sheet here, and he and Shinsuke worked wonderfully together. Obviously, the best exchange that these two have ever had in WWE. And it was a shame watching them work against each other in that tag team match a couple of weeks ago. I think it was actually last week where Bryan and Otis beat Nakamura and Cesaro. And I'm thinking, they work well together, but this was at one point a dream match, 5 or 6 years ago. Far from it now. But they went at it here. No bullshit, no involvement, no interference, no shenanigans. Just a straight-up match, and they fucking killed it. They got a lot of time. Nakamura beat him clean, I think with a Kinshasa, and it just looked great. And it was just a really, really great match. And it made me hopeful. It gave me hope. It made me optimistic that if we do eventually get a Bryan Nakamura feud on SmackDown, it could be fucking killer. So Nakamura wins, which was weird. So, because you would think... I don't know, because I guess he wanted Adam Pearce to win. I don't know what they were exactly going for here. Because he pinned a heel Shinsuke, or at least what I thought was supposed to be a heel Shinsuke, because then Shinsuke shook Daniel Bryan's hand afterwards. So I don't know if they made Nakamura babyface-like for this one match, or if that's something they're going to be going with going forward, and I really hope it is. I could do a whole fucking podcast on Shinsuke Nakamura, but the fact that he lost to Otis in 3 minutes a few weeks ago, after winning the Royal Rumble 3 years ago, was very sad. Very depressing. This guy has had quite the fall from grace. Not because of anything he did. It's not like a Velveteen Dream situation. It's just because they don't know how to book the guy. Nakamura, to his credit, has had a lot of success. He's a former 2-time United States champion, Intercontinental champion, SmackDown Tag Team champion, Royal Rumble winner, WrestleMania headliner. He's had success on the main roster. He's just not nearly as big as he used to be. And any momentum and any fanfare this guy had a few years ago has been completely vanquished. It's completely gone. So he gets beat the fuck up by Roman and specifically Jay. And I think we're getting Nakamura and Jay next week on the show. That was announced on Talking Smack right afterward, or the next morning, whatever. So then Adam Pearce comes out with Roman. Adam Pearce doesn't want to be involved in this thing. Jey Uso super kicks Adam. They lay Adam Pearce's body on top of Nakamura, and Adam Pearce becomes the number one contender to Roman Reigns' Universal Championship at the Royal Rumble. I do not want to see that at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. That whole feud with Adam Pearce and Roman has not been built up enough for me to give a fuck. I know Roman and Owens have had a number of matches already, but at least that would be a better story and a better match. Then also, too, if you don't want Owens to lose again, then why continue the feud in the first place? They should have fucking finished it on the SmackDown Christmas episode 2 weeks ago with the steel cage match. But they opted to continue it for whatever reason. You painted yourself into a corner here. You either put Kevin Owens in there, or maybe Adam Pearce with the I don't know how Adam Pearce got, what is it, outranked or whatever. They went over his head to get him in the match here. Does Adam Pearce have any power at all to say, hey, I don't want to be involved in this match? That didn't make any sense to me. They have so many people on that show that would just be better opponents for Roman of the Rumble than Adam Pearce. It might be a fun storytelling thing, but Adam Pearce is, the guy he was a former NWA champion for God's sakes, but in WWE canon, the guy is not a trained performer, I don't think. I don't think we're supposed to believe that this guy can go in the ring. So, what was I going to say? Oh, with Adam Pearce. So, with him at the Rumble, there are just so many better options than him. You have Rey Mysterio, for example. Kevin Owens, another match with him. Daniel Bryan. They could have put fucking Goldberg back on SmackDown, done the Roman and Goldberg match there, had Roman win LOL, and then move on. They could have put Nakamura in there, and that still could happen. I'm really hopeful that if they're doing Nakamura and Jey Uso next week, that all hope is not lost for Nakamura. And that this could lead to bigger and better things for him. You got to get him back in the spotlight. The showing that he had here, it felt a lot like the showing that Kofi Kingston had in that Gauntlet, and Rollins had in that Gauntlet a couple of years ago. Nakamura had a very similar showing here, and I really hope that he can get out of this with something more notable than continuing to team with Cesaro. And they're a good team, but Nakamura deserves to be on his own. The guy, there's a lot of untapped potential there. Turn him back into a babyface. Give him his old fucking music back. It's been 3 years now. The whole heel thing, it was entertaining at first. It's just they have done absolutely nothing with Nakamura. Why the fuck is he still a heel? The fact that he's still a heel just blows my mind. He was a babyface for less than a year. And now they turned him heel, and it's been 3 years. He's been a heel for longer than he was ever in WWE before, since coming to WWE 5 years ago. He arrived 5 years ago. He was a face for the first 2 years in NXT, then on SmackDown, and has been a heel for the last 3. It's time to move on and turn him back into a babyface. And I would love to get Nakamura and Roman to the Rumble. Then what do you do with Kevin Owens is the question. It's just a mess in that championship picture right now because I heard a rumor, not even a rumor, it was flat out confirmed, that Damian Priest was supposed to be involved in last week's main event, and then just they pulled it because it didn't make any sense, nor does it make any sense. I completely agree with the decision to pull him from the show, because why would you do that? I don't know. I'm loving the Roman stuff right now. I just don't know where they're going with this. And if Adam Pearce just gives up his spot to Shinsuke or Owens or someone else, then why have him win in the first place? You know what I mean? It's just very bizarre. So I like the match itself. I just have no idea where they're going with the whole Adam Pearce thing. Overall, though, I did think this was a pretty good show. Roman Reigns and Adam Pearce was kind of the central theme of the episode for the most part. The Gauntlet, up until the finish anyway, I thought was great. The SmackDown Tag Team title match was great. New champions crowned there. And the Intercontinental title match was not what it could have been, but they furthered the story. And I'm interested to see where they go with Apollo Crews from here. So overall, I would give it 2 thumbs up. And we also got Sonya Deville back on the show in multiple segments. And if she's going to be on the show a bunch going forward, I'm all for that because she's a great character. And hey, not even putting her back in the ring from the get-go, I think that might be a good idea anyway because she's a great character. Not only is she good in the ring, on the mic is really where she shines. So if we can see more of Sonya, the character, in the next couple of weeks without her wrestling, then I'm all for that too. So I think SmackDown overall, despite a few questionable things, is in a pretty good place. That's my review for SmackDown for January 8th, 2021. Thank you as always for checking it out. Be sure to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Hit the bell button as well to be notified every time a new video goes up, including my exclusive reviews this past week with Keith Lee, Apollo Crews, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Check them out all right now, right here on the channel. Subscribe, and you'll never miss a video. Have a great one, guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.